Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode here at Yashavi Ministries with Casa de Israel Yarah. Thank you again for being here. If you like the content that we have in our channel, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section down below. With that being said, let's get started with this week's Torah portion. So, this week's Torah portion is VAYIKRA, right? Before we start reading, we're going to do a Torah blessing. So it says, "Blessed are you, Adonai, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with the commandments. He has ordered us to study the words of your Torah. Please, Adonai, that the words of your Torah are pleasant to our mouth and to the house of Israel. That the house of Israel and their sons and the sons of your people, the house of Israel, are knowers of your name and students of your Torah for its essence. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches the Torah to his people of Israel. Blessed are you, Adonai, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among the nations and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah." Amen. So, like I said, this week's Torah portion is VAYIKRA. The portion starts off in Leviticus 1 through 6, 7, and it is introducing us to the book that is right in the middle of the Torah, right? Now, we understand now that the Torah are the 5 books of Moses, or the 5 books that were given to Moses by Elohim, right? The recount of the history and the order of the Creator, right? So we understood in Genesis, creation. We understood that in Genesis we had creation, we had the fall of man, right? We had Noah, we had the flood, we had Abraham, the man that was chosen to have descendancy of a nation that would eventually become the people of Israel. And in Exodus, we saw this nation or this family become a nation, right? And we saw Elohim deliver them from bondage, from Egypt, right? From oppression, from a kingdom of many deities that served as representations of God. And so they were delivered from there. And now, towards the end of the book of Exodus, we saw that Elohim gave the people of Israel a new identity. He gave them the law, right? The Torah, the Decalogue, right? The 10 Commandments, plus other commandments, right? A structure in which they were going to live and structure the nation by. Okay? And then they were given the temple, the place in where they were going to come to worship, the place that they were going to come to honor Elohim and represent him. And so at the end of Exodus, we saw that Elohim gave the people a place in where they were going to meet with him and get to encounter him, and where he will abide with his people, his chosen people. Okay? Now, the closing part of Exodus gave us the details of how they constructed the tabernacle, who constructed them, and how they constructed it. The elements, right? The courtyard, lever, right? The altar, the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, the ark of the covenant, right? The holy of holies, the holy place, right? All these intricacies, right? The high priest, the priesthood, right, was chosen, and so all these details were given. Now, Elohim comes from the mountain, Mount Sinai, and where he communicated with Moses. And he now, at the end of Exodus, right, Exodus 40, we see how the cloud enters the tabernacle. Now the presence of Elohim comes from the mountain into the tabernacle, and now the presence of Elohim is among the people. And now we come to the book of VAYIKRA, in the moment where Elohim calls Moses from the Holy of Holies. Because from the ark, he will speak to the people, or he will speak to Moses, and Moses will transmit the message. So, VAYIKRA, Leviticus 1 through 6, starts the following way. It says, "VAYIKRA el Moshe Daber Adonai elav me'ohel moed la'amor." In English, "And the Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to him, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd or from the flock." Now, Elohim is going to tell the people, God has delivered the people Now he has told them how he wants the place that they will meet with him to be built according to his order. And now he's going to tell them how they're going to approach him with his presence in this place. Now, temples, right, were common in ancient Near Eastern civilizations, right? Rituals, sacrifices, like we're going to learn today, were common in this time. They believed that the gods wanted a place and that they will feed them. And so we will touch on those details, okay? But the main point right now is that Elohim created a place, or gave the people a place where he wants to dwell. Now he's going to tell them how they will approach him. Now, it talks about an offering, a burnt offering, right? Now, this book, or this Torah portion, has a couple, right? It has the burnt offering, it has the cereal offering, the well-being offering, it has the purification offering, offerings for sacrilege or repentance, and the priestly sacrificial duties. So, information in this Torah portion, right? We're going to touch only the burnt offering and the cereal offering, so we can understand what is the purpose of the sacrifice. Before we get into any other sacrifice, we have to understand what is the purpose with this, right? Because when we see blood, when we see any type of information where the Bible says that an animal has to be killed and all these rituals have to be done, we are quick to discard this information and take it out. So let's read. The Lord called Moses, spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any of you bring an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd of the flock. If this offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer a male without blemish. He shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. He shall lay his hand, one hand, on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. Then he shall kill the bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and throw the blood against the sides of the altar. That is, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then he shall flay the burnt offering and cut it into pieces, and the sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and arrange the wood on the fire. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall arrange the pieces, the head, and the fat on the wood that is on the fire on the altar. But his entrails and his legs he shall wash with water. And the priest shall burn all of it on the altar as a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Now, if his gift for a burnt offering is from the flock, from the sheep or goats, he shall bring a male without blemish. He shall kill it on the north side of the altar before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priest, shall throw it in blood against the side of the altar. He shall cut it into pieces with its head and its fat, and the priest shall arrange them on the wood that is on the fire of the altar. But the entrails and the legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall offer all of it and burn it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. If the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, and he shall bring, if his offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, then he shall bring his offering of turtle doves and pigeons, and the priest shall bring it in, and the priest shall bring it to the altar and wring off its head and burn it on the altar, and its blood shall be drained out in the side of the altar, and he shall remove its crop with its content and cast it beside the altar on the east side, is in the place for ashes. He shall tear it open by its wings, but shall not serve it completely. And the priest shall burn it on the altar, on the wood that is on the fire, a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So the burnt offering, right, if it was cattle, if it was sheep or a goat, or if it was a bird, each had a different approach, but it was all burned completely on the altar. We're going to read some information from this book, Leviticus, Jacob Milgram. Very great information of ancient Near East, context of the sacrificial functions and meaning, and a little bit from here, the JPS Torah commentary on Leviticus. Why we're using these resources? Because these authors, these researchers did research that we did not do based on the information with context, with integrity, and these details that they bring shine light into fundamental aspects of our faith and help us understand things that we are not able to understand because we don't have the scholarly or the studies, right? So this information takes time to understand, and so if we can make it easier on ourselves, we do our best to. So chapter 1 through 7, right, constitutes the first section of the book of Leviticus. Okay, they outline the basic modes of sacrifice, right? Listings describing a several classes of offerings to be presented to God in His sanctuary, right? Chapters 1 through 5 addresses to the general populace, to individual Israelites, to their leaders, and to all who wish to worship God, or who were required by circumstances to offer a particular sacrifice. Okay? The ritual expiation, right, was restricted to situations where reasonable doubt existed as to the willfulness of the offense. Okay? Even then, restitution was always required where loss or injury to another person had occurred. The mistaken notion that ritual worship could atone for criminality or international religious desecration was persistently attacked by the prophet of Israel, who considered it a major threat to the entire covenantal relationship between Israel and God. Chapter 1 deals with the sacrifice called Olah, which was burned to ashes to the altar burnt offering. No part of it was eaten either by the priests or donors. Olah could consist of a male herd, cattle, or of flock animals, or certain birds. Despite some differences in detail, the procedures, all burnt offerings and holocausts were quite similar. So, these offerings were all burnt, and these were offered voluntarily, and it reflected a relationship and a desire to draw near God voluntarily, being grateful. Okay? Now, Jacob Milgram brings a contrast, right, from the ancient Near Eastern pagan rituals or customs to what Israel is being portrayed. Now, remember, Israel comes from a pagan culture, meaning Egyptian culture, right? And Egyptian culture is influenced by Mesopotamian, and Akkadian and Canaanite cultures, right? They're about to enter Canaan, right? So these mindsets were in the world, right? And so Elohim is trying to teach Israel to worship Him correctly. Okay? It says here for Jacob Milgram, it says, Mesopotamian religions as the care of feeding the gods, right? So in Mesopotamia, they believed that they fed the god, okay? So pagans regularly set food and drink on their tables, but the priestly liturgists banned all food rites inside the shrine. All sacrifices were to be offered on the outer altar in the open courtyard, okay? Now, they used to believe that they will offer the sacrifice and then the god will eat it, right? Here, Israel burns it all on the altar and doesn't enter the sanctuary because Elohim doesn't eat it. Remember, detail for the sacrifice is the following. You pick out a cattle, a goat or a sheep, a bird. It is understood that the cattle was the most priciest offering that you can bring, right? Back then, cattle, sheep, all these elements were very important compared to today, where it's money, a dollar and all that. Right? Back then, if you had a lot of cattle, if you had a lot of sheep, if you had a lot of goat, you were rich, or you were pretty wealthy. Okay? So the cattle was a meaning of you were bringing a free will offering in a way, right? Or a free will burnt offering of thanksgiving and being grateful, right? To Elohim, or you brought a sheep or goat, which was like middle class, you could say, and then the pigeon, the bird, was more for somebody that was not able to afford a cattle or a sheep or a goat. They brought a pigeon or a bird to still demonstrate their gratefulness to Elohim. Okay? Now, the sacrifice is not something that costs the people. It wasn't like, oh, I'm giving you a sacrifice because it costs me to bring it to you. No. The sacrifice or the offering, as we read, they put the hand on it, on the goat or on the cattle, and that animal represented the person. So instead of the person being sacrificed, the animal is sacrificed or offered on behalf of the person. So paying attention to the detail of how the sacrifice looked, it being perfect, and all of this demonstrated a perspective of the person in their relationship with Elohim, with God. If you brought God the best that you had in an offering of thanksgiving and showing how grateful you are to Him, right? This burnt offering. And so that would demonstrate who you were on that altar, right? That offering represented the person. We have to understand something. Culturally, we cannot get confused. The sacrifice has to go in hand with the offerer. Okay? The offerer is supposed to understand that this sacrifice represents him. So he has to be morally apt to bring this sacrifice. The most important aspect of the offering and the sacrifices is that when you bring an offering, you have to be morally compatible with what you're bringing. Doesn't mean because you bring a cattle, you morally are worth as much as that sacrifice. Understand what I'm saying? Right? It's not so much exactly what you bring. It has to be a balance. You morally have to be doing justice and righteousness, helping the need, right? Being a good person, right? That we might believe in. And so with that moral compass, understanding that you have to align yourself with God's order, if you're doing the right thing and you're living correctly, then when you bring the sacrifice or the offering, it will represent you. Okay? What happened down the line with Israel is that they kept bringing sacrifices and offerings, but they were not changing morally. Okay? So, the sacrifices represents you. The most important concept of the sacrificial system is it represents who you are. The second offering that we can read about is the grain offering. It says, when anyone brings a grain offering as an offering to the Lord, his offering shall be fine flour, and he shall pour oil on it and put frankincense on it and bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests. And he shall take it from the handful of the fine flour and oil with all frankincense, and the priest shall burn this as his memorial portion on the altar, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. But the rest of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is most holy part of the Lord's food offering. When you bring grain offering baked with oven as an offering, it shall be unleavened loaves of fine flour mixed with oil, or unleavened wafers smeared with oil. And if an offering is a grain offering baked in griddle, it shall be fine flour unleavened mixed with oil. You shall break it in pieces and pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. And if your offering is grain offering cooked in a pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. And you shall bring the grain offering that is made of these things to the Lord. And when it is presented to the priest, he shall bring it to the altar. And the priest shall take from the grain offering its memorial portion and burn it in the altar, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. But the rest of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the Lord's food offering. No grain offering that you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven, for you shall burn no leaven, nor any honey as food offering to the Lord. As an offering of first fruit you may bring to the Lord. The cereal offering is understood to be for the poor, right? Offering up an animal sacrifice could be very costly. To allow all the Israelites access to Elohim through the sacrificial system, the priestly liturgy created an alternative, okay? A sacrifice for the poor, the cereal offering, right? And so in Mesopotamia, right, occult cereal offerings were offered up to the gods by totally burning them on improvised altars, okay? So the text of the cereal offering therefore inserts into its prescriptions of caveat that irrespective of what the pagans do, and indeed what might be expected of cereal offering as a surrogate burnt offering, Israel should not offer up the cereal offering even though it belongs to God, but awarded to the priests as their prerequisite, right? So, now, what does this say? Leaven cannot be brought in the temple. It says, leaven is the arch symbol of fermentation, deterioration, and death, and hence taboo on the altar of blessing and life. Okay? Wine and the epitome of fermentation is never burned on the altar hearth, but is poured on the altar base. And so the prohibition against turning into smoke any fermented substance has not been transgressed. Also, the honey mentioned here is fruit honey. The stereotype metaphor for Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey, must intend fruit honey, because Canaan from time immemorial was known for its abundant fruits, special dates, and figs and grapes. So, understanding that, remember, the contrast that is being made is with pagan or ancient Near Eastern concepts of sacrifices and temples. Okay? Now, understanding these first two offerings, right? Because then after this we have the well-being offering, right? The well-being offering is its core offering is thankfulness, although it takes on three unique forms discussed. It says that the well-being offering falls into three categories: free will, vow, thanksgiving, right? The common denominator of all three categories is joy. I used to sacrifice a well-being offering and eat them, rejoicing before the Lord your God. The free will offering is the spontaneous byproduct of one's happiness whatsoever it causes. With a whole heart, they made a free will offering to Elohim. So, the main function of all the well-being offerings is to provide meat for the table. Each one was ate by the priests and by the people. Leviticus 1-3, the first three offerings that we see, the first three sacrifices that we have read, represent the people. Okay, the sacrificial system that we don't want to understand or we don't like to understand because we don't comprehend it in our time. Has a very once you understand the context, has a very direct message. The sacrifices help the people draw near God. The offerings help the people draw near God. The sacrifices and the offerings were physical representations that demonstrated their relationship with Elohim and how they morally represent Elohim and how thankful they were, or how no matter what status they were able to draw near. They had options. It talks about the priestly duties with the sacrificial system and how they were supposed to keep themselves holy so that they can minister to the people, so that they can represent the people. The people will prepare the sacrifices, but the priests were the ones that brought it near to Elohim. So one of the most important concepts that we need to understand from the sacrificial system is that the offerer, just as the priest who is officiating, right, the process, is that we're called to be morally prepared. We're called to be morally structured so that we can represent Elohim correctly. That's the best way that we can simplify the beginning of the book of Leviticus. Okay? The book of Leviticus has a structure. The book of Leviticus is divided into 7 sections. Okay? Rituals, which is chapter 1-7, and chapters 23-27. Okay? It also has the priesthood, right? Which is chapters 8-10 and chapters 21-22, and the purity laws that teach us how to be ritually pure and morally pure, or morally impure or ritually impure. Okay? And they are chapter 11-15 and chapter 18-20. Right? These sections demonstrate us how we draw near, who are the ones that represent us, and how they are called to be prepared morally and ritually, and how we keep ourselves morally and ritually prepared to draw near Elohim and be in the presence of Elohim. The book of Leviticus, VAYIKRA, calls us to understand how we not only get close to Elohim, how we maintain ourselves in the presence of Elohim, and how we are called to minister those that want to draw near Elohim and get to know His presence, and get to know His order, and get to know His purpose. And hopefully I can bring you something so that you can draw near Elohim and stay morally pure and are able to honor Him in everything you do. So I thank you for watching. Have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.